Hi everyone, I'm on my lunch break now and I want to paint me some eggplants. So I'll set myself a time limit of 45 minutes and we just see how far we get. So let's dive in and have some fun. I have the following colors on my palette. Cerulean blue. Next to that I have some phthalo green, some ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, and white. Let's wipe a bit up there. Let's get started. The only thing I did here is place some dots halfway through to have some indications for where to put my my lines. And then what I like to do is just take my pencil, Pit Pastel pencil, to get some rough shapes in there. Now, I see here one of them that goes a bit like that, all the way until here, and then there's this little green tip sticking out of the eggplant. Roughly in the middle here, the middle line, it hits there. Then about here, another line. Now my iPad, I have a grid over it also with these squares on it, so it gives me some indications. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I must say it does look like it's quite easy shapes, but I've also learned not to be fooled by that, because even in the simplest of shapes can be still quite some complexity. That's why for now I always like to keep it simple in this beginning stage. Just get some lines on there. We have some green stuff there and a tip. We have two eggplants. So here goes the other. It's there. Also, don't be afraid to play around with the shapes a bit. And it's your painting. You can do whatever you please. Again, some green and a tip pointing towards the corner there. I feel these greens should be a little bit bigger. No. And also, what I always like to put in my paintings is the shadow play. Kind of have a bit more body, this one. And I do see like this shadow, soft shadow coming underneath. And here's one following also a bit the shape of the eggplant. It really adds a lot of depth to it and perspective if you work with your shadows. I think for now, this is as far as I need my sketch to be, and then we can move on to brushes. Now, for my colors, I see on the eggplant very dark shadows near to black. And as you remember, on my palette, I had some alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. So I'm mixing those two together now, and you get like this very dark black color. So that is what I'm going to use for my dark parts. And if I go over thinly, it's less dark. Very simple. Now, I see the upper one is a bit more slightly bluishly tinted. So I'm just using a bit more blue in that mixture with alizarin crimson and make a second color next to it. And I also have some cerulean blue on my palette, so let's just see what happens when I add some of that to that mixture. Already gets a bit more light. So we have these two tones, a bit more darker purple and blue. And that's my first mixture. I'm just getting a tissue in my hand because I always like to use that to wipe off my palette knife and my brush. I don't use any spirits or water or anything for now, especially because we're in a short time frame. Now, let's start with those darkest points first. So I'm taking that initial mixture and I'm starting with the one in the bottom. I do like this color. Now, I see also that really at the bottom there's like this reflection coming off of the table on the eggplant. So I do want to keep some space for that. This is just about getting some shapes in there. This one goes there with a nice curve. As you can tell, my background is quite pinky. That's because, of course, the purples in the eggplants, they do lend nicely for such a background showing through a bit. When I go over very lightly, you can always see that purple shine through. A bit darker stripe there. By no means this all needs to be perfect. I'm just getting some lines on there and trying to get some texture in there. For the other one, I have the slightly more bluish color. Also beautifully dark there. And where these two eggplants hit, they're kind of blending with each other. You don't see any line work there. They just dissolve in each other. And as these are both two very dark colors, also based off the same colors, I think we can do that very nicely as well. So let's do that right away. I'd say for our darkest colors, this would be it. Now, we also have some lighter colors on that eggplant, of course. I'm gonna see if we can achieve something like that just by getting a bit more of that red and blue. That's a bit too red still. I'm adding some of the cerulean blue to it as well, because you do get a nice purplish color with that alizarin crimson. Let's just see how that does. Nice warm color. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush now. Basically just scumbling it on there. Letting the colors overflow a bit with each other. All good. touch of blue there. That's what I see on my picture also. And let's see. What happens if we just use a little bit of yellow ochre in my mixture, because that makes it the ultramarine blue and the alizarin crimson. They're very both transparent pigments. And if I introduce yellow ochre, which is quite a covering one, I get a totally different vibe. And coverage. A bit more neutral. And don't forget that we have quite a strong undercolor here as well. So the background I really want to neutralize a bit later on. Let's need to introduce some white to my colors to make it a bit more light. Let's see, to do something with this one. See, it's a bit purplish gray, I would say. Still need to keep that upper side a bit empty, because later on I want to have that reflected light from the table it's laying on. Just scumbling on here. As you can see, you can still see the pink underneath. Here we see some blue. Also getting some more white in my other mixture for the one in the front. For example, for this part. And for this part. And now comes a moment that I'd like to see some more of the background, to see which direction I'm actually going to. Now, I do like purple in combination with yellow. So I'm mixing some yellow ochre with cadmium yellow. And then I add a bunch of white to that to make it a very light color. Let's see if that's too yellow. No, I think that's actually quite okay. It looks very fresh. Now for that, I would like to use a bigger brush, because we got quite some coverage there. And limited time, of course, as I mentioned before. Now, here I made my shadow marks. I'm going over those. Around those, I mean, sorry. And here, go down, following the shape of that eggplant. Here, following the shape. Didn't put enough paint on the brush. I do like these streaky brush marks though. They add some character to it, don't you think? later on we can refine everything we want to refine. That's for now no concern. Also what helps in these cases, that you put a bit of painting medium in the paint, that it's less tacky, so to say, and it's easier to spread. But for this short one, I'm just gonna keep it simple. Just with paint straight out of the tubes. Well, not straight out of the tubes, of course, because it's mixed. I do like how the pink is still showing through there, because it kind of bonds the whole thing together. So I'm just going over there lightly. Because I still like that to keep showing through. Might go over there later on with some white. Now, actually, for the shadow parts, I can also continue. See what happens when I add one of that, bit of that, the mixed value for the eggplants with this background color. Get a nice grayish, darker tone. And I think that might work just well. Yeah, that will do. And when I look at it like this, it even, to the eye, it's green. Funny thing, on the palette, it doesn't look like green. Let me show you. Green, more grayish. Green, more grayish. See, these are the things I like to play around with and just see where a painting takes you. And this obviously has to do with all the colors surrounding it. And the underground color also. But I do like that. How your mind can play tricks on you, or your eyes perhaps. Gonna do the same thing for the other one, but then with the other mixture. So that's a slightly more purplish one. Purplish gray, so to say. See if that works. If not, we try something else. But to me, it seems to work. That's something you should always keep in mind. It's your painting. And don't stress too much about all sorts of complicated color theories and what looks good and what doesn't. In the end, you're the one who decides. You're the one who creates. And most of all, you're the one who's having fun in painting it. I think that's one of the most important things when painting, is that you just enjoy it. Enjoy the process. And do not stress too much about outcome. That's what I like about painting small. You can move on once done. Now, I'm gonna go back to my smaller brush here and put some of those details in the skin. So I'm mixing a bit of the background color with the color of the eggplant itself. It's quite similar to the shadowy part, but just at the edge I want to have like this shiny part come out. That's basically just a copy of the foreground, background, or what you call it. That's what we have roughly about here. Now for this, it's best to use a bit opaque colors like titanium white, yellow ochre, so you can cover well that underground, that pink underground. Now, same thing for the other eggplant. Making a bit more neutral light color here with the ochre, because it basically is the bounced off light from that table. It should be lighter than the shadow, so I'm adding a bit more. That will do, but the shadow I need to make a bit darker there. Now, what I'll do, making it more dark. And a bit more purple also. That way you have a bigger contrast to it all. Not too dark, because it's a light table, it's a well-lit environment, not really dramatic play of light. I think that will do. Then again, I have a light part of the reflection. I'm trying to dabble on there now a bit. This is easily a part where, or this is a part where your brush easily gets contaminated by all the other colors which are already on the painting itself. And it all blends quite easily. Just try to make a convincing blend there. I think it's okay. Okay enough, at least. Now, this edge is a bit softer. So I'm just going over that with my brush. Still the same brush. Trying to smoothen it out a bit. Not overcomplicating things. Let's draw some more of the body work in here. And I put a little bit of yellow ochre in my mixture now, again to get a bit more coverage, so to speak. And to play a bit with all that purple color in there. This is a very dark area, so I'm putting the paint on there quite thickly to get that extra dark over there, because remember, these are quite transparent paints I'm using. Same goes here. It doesn't have the body it needs to have yet. Here's a little bit more blended. Here also this dark spot. And then there's also this little line here, which is slightly darker than the rest. Let's try to work on this painting as a whole. So this one needs to have these dark parts really on place. A nice sharp edge here and there. And I do see here at the bottom, there's still some of that dark color coming through. At that edge. It also helps with seeing the shape. Now here, needs to be a bit more soft. Same thing goes here. Just going over that with my brush. Nothing too precise, just make it a little bit more soft. Now, I do see on the reference picture a lot of awesome bright blues. I didn't put anything like that in my painting yet. So let's see what we can mix up there. I'm just taking some white, titanium white with this cerulean blue. Trying not to overdo the white because, yeah, you can easily kill the blue that way. And we also need some green still. Well, I did have some phthalo green on my palette, but that's a very strong color. So let's see what else we can mix. Maybe with that cerulean blue a bit. Some yellow. It's a very vibrant green. Need to kill it down a bit. I'm using yellow ochre and some ultramarine blue to darken and neutralize a bit. It's still quite light, but I think it is a nice balance for this piece. I do want a bit more dark, so I'll add some of that ultramarine blue to it. So we have a bit of the shadow greens as well. Not really happy with the edges around there yet. So what we do, we go in again. Doesn't need to have too much sharpness to it though. Sometimes you can just make it a bit more fake. On top here we also have that glowy reflection part. So I'm gonna take some more white and of the yellow background color. Need to take enough of it though, because otherwise it's not gonna really help. That is a stroke I like. A nice long, smooth stroke. Moving right over there. It's a bit too thick, so what I'm gonna do is just make this a bit more nuanced. Following those shapes. And realizing I have about 10 minutes left. But once again, no stress, no stress. Enjoy the process. And of course, if you don't finish it in one sitting, then you can always continue it another time. For me now, the purpose is to see how far we can get. So, and I like my textures in paintings also. So what I do, gently with the palette knife, putting on some of those lighter values. And places where it doesn't hit so hard, I can use my brush for that. Dapple, 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 dapple. So creating some textures again. And blending it a bit with these lighter parts. Line is not that sharp. That area needs to have like the brightest spot what I can see on the picture. Before we go any further, please hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying it this far. It helps me to keep making these videos available on YouTube. Thank you very much for your support. Now, let's continue. I miss my blues still, so let's get some of those blues in there. Here, it's a bit vaguely. Just one stroke. Oh, I do like how that turned out. Here in the bottom also. Right from the other angle. The one above. It's amazing how many colors there are in a vegetable like this. I really like how those reflections shine on these things. And it's okay to see the strokes, huh, people? Really. I love seeing strokes. Otherwise, you don't want to see strokes by a photo or a poster. Gives this nice blue sheen to this one. And there are also these very, very bright blue spots on there. For example, here and there. Here. Very bright. Now I see here, I didn't do the reflection part yet. It looks a bit like a strange bump here, so let's try to do something there. Make it look less awkward. See if we can do that. I think it's mainly caused by the direction of the brush here. That already looks better. Transition with the shadow should be a bit more smoothened out, because I don't want any focus to that shadowy part. You're good like that? Maybe a little bit more. Just going over it. Gets the job done. Same thing goes for the one at the bottom. There we go. And now I also noticed that we have like these little crack kind of things in it. So let's see if with some yellow ochre and alizarin crimson we can just add a touch of that also, because I think it's quite typical for the vegetable we're making. You know, these scratches. Normally when I have an underpainting in burnt sienna, I would just scratch it in. But in this case we cannot, because the pink would be too overwhelming, I guess. We have some very bright highlights here. Before I do that, I want to lighten the spot a bit. Dappling it up on there. Also creating some lovely textures again. Let me do that again on the other one. I'm still in need of some of that reflected light here. Actually, that can be a bit softer. Like that better. I want the highlight here to be a bit more prominent. Not too much, but a bit. And then let's add some highlights. Just moving it around a bit. It's 1. 2. Here's another one. And 3. This doesn't feel round enough for me yet, so I'm gonna do one last final touch up there. And then I really need to get back to work. Didn't even eat my lunch yet. Maybe one more final thing before we really go. A little bit more variation in these. Not too much, just a bit. Okay. I am calling it done. All that's left to do is sign it, and I just scratch that in the paint with a toothpick. There we go. Hope you enjoyed. This is the final outcome of my 45-minute session. I need to hold it at a slight angle, otherwise you have that glare, so I'm just playing around with it. But the reference picture for these eggplants are over on my Instagram channel, and you can also simply search for the hashtag Food Paint Challenge over there to find it. And I do invite you to paint it for yourself in any style, any medium you'd like to, and just enjoy the process. And perhaps also set yourself a time limit, or just, take as long as you need or want to spend on it. Happy painting.